was asked to speak about the premise and ambition of our work, and that work is a very strange animal to understand if you don't have the requisite understandings in place to absorb it. But first, I want to talk a bit about me. My name is Moritz Bierling. I am now the Vice President of the Institute. That is a recent development. Thank you. Attaining this title for me is the culmination of about a decade's worth of work. I am perhaps an unlikely person to stand up here and speak to you about what we are doing. I am the oldest of 3 younger brothers, coming from Germany. I have a father who has been in the same job all his life, and in his own way has provided the stability through sacrifice that has made it possible for me to feel like I can contribute something to the world that is of value. But in a way, he also, by having been an employee all his life, impressed upon me a lot of habits and assumptions that would make me more a recipient, a consumer of other people's force being exerted out into the world. And so for me, going out into the world and making my own way and bringing to you today what our institute offers to the world has been an unlikely development and the product of a decade's worth of work to undo a lot of the things I have learned and absorbed throughout my childhood. So I want to briefly share with you a vow that I made 10 years ago now, pretty much around this time, when I embarked on my own journey to translate what in my mind was valuable and important to do into actions in the world. This is the vow. Tomorrow is the last full day that I will spend with my family in the home I grew up in the city, country, and continent I have lived my entire life. I leave behind those moments of joy and honesty with my parents and brothers, nothing more. I have no best friends that will miss me awfully, no exciting job at which my contribution is invaluable, and no too meaningful prospects in life to forgo. I have set my sight on a new world, a better life, a more meaningful existence amongst principled and productive people. This challenge will test me in every way imaginable as I struggle to know more, feel more, do more. I have chosen to eschew the trodden path. Instead, I will work hard and alongside my fellow travelers, build a city in the sky. Where we go, we won't need roads. Back then, I was still libertarian. I am done with non-living by living up, what does that even mean, to other people's standards. My beliefs are simple, yet hard to uphold in a society demanding I cheer for violence. My beliefs are principled, yet no one cares to listen for fear of being called a radical. Again, a meaningless word. My beliefs are rooted in reality, yet everyone decries me as utopian. My beliefs carry deep emotion, yet I am perceived as uncaring and cold. Such is the nature of a sick society. Lies are truth, violence is love, sociopathy is leadership, and most importantly of all, slavery is freedom. I vow hereby to myself and everyone who cares to know, I will live to know truth, experience love, achieve meaning, accumulate wisdom, produce value, speak honestly, act virtuously. That's the vow that I took in my own journey onto the world, attempting to build something better than what it is at present. But so what? I've made a vow. What then? What do you do with that? You actually have to translate it into action. And so it's one thing to have the right intuitions, the right moral orientation, but it's another to systematically pursue the outcomes that those intuitions actually aim at. So I've made it my vocation then to find and help the visionaries building the futures that it is worth working for. And I count Curt's work among that ensemble of people, or that ensemble of works. My work then has largely centered around discovering thinkers and practitioners of frontier disciplines. In short, effective agents that translate their own vision of what the world should look like into actions and outcomes they attain along the way. And along that path, I have practiced what I now believe to be the single most essential skill to get good at if you take that same vow or make that same promise to yourself. And that is recognizing your betters when they stand before you, and either challenging them or getting out of their way. I want to repeat that. Recognizing your betters when they stand before you. If you are not able to do that, you're going to perpetually be lost and confused about what it actually is that you need to orient yourself to and how you can make your way in the world, because you're going to bump into people's activity. You're going to not have an ability to arrange yourself in a larger order that is representative of the values that you hold. And so I can empathize with the lost boys, the people we all know in the public sphere that draw attention, that are clamoring for attention, because they themselves have been underinvested in. They themselves are clamoring for something, some semblance of order, some semblance of sense-making, that they lash out at everybody else around them and fail to ever really translate their pain and their hurt into something that's driving them forward, where they produce value positively rather than merely destroy what is out there. And so in my own way, my own conscientization in that process was really the 2008-2009 financial crisis, where it became apparent to me that the people in power don't really have any clue what they're doing. They don't understand how an economy works. They lie to us at all times. They pretend, they use stagecraft rather than statecraft to perform a show in front of us, to draw our attention, to take away our presence with the people around us and convert that into attention to something that's very far away from us. But addressing that crisis, that financial crisis for me was the first instance of becoming aware of, and that I think the Institute talks about in many different ways, and Curt is going to do that after me. It needs collective action. It's not an individual activity you can perform. You can envision it, but you have to actually organize people to attain it. And so that work to be done is very large in scope, but it is also achievable. And it requires the adults in the room to set aside the childish and selfish attachments to their special little theory that grants them a status in the attention economy that they are a member of. And it requires them to forge alliances with each other and commit themselves to the fight thoroughly. We heard yesterday our guest speakers talk about this, that you're not going to succeed at getting your little thing out into the world and having that effect that you want it to have unless you have that very tight seal in that pressure cooker and you actually infuse it with the energy that will have the steam shoot out the top. And so I would assert that if you watch the main talks from this arc of 3 conferences, you will grasp the shape of the work we've done to address the crises of our age. It will require further study. You will have to interact with us to really integrate it into your own understanding. But that is where you will end up. You will understand what the crises of our era actually are, and you will have a sense that they are addressable, and you will have the opportunity to make yourself a part of doing that. The core of the work, to keep it very short, is testimonial truth and reciprocity. Truth is not something that you can, as Brandon said, attain or prove. It is merely something you discover in the pursuit of excellence. And so it is a practice that you can perform. You can practice to speak truthfully, to testify. That's where our understanding of truth really comes from. And if you do that, then you don't introduce into the commons impurities or lies or deceits or ambiguities that lead people to take actions based on false understanding, imprecise understanding, that will then lead them to violate reciprocity with each other. And so understanding reciprocity helps you conduct yourself in the public in a way that doesn't produce externalities that Brandon was speaking to earlier. In my own life, I've practiced that through first the use of e prime, as in the English language without the verb to be, and any of its declinations. You can do that yourself. You can practice to speak in a way that doesn't rely on that word, and that will teach you to not confuse a lot of the ambiguities that the English language still leaves open for you if you use that word. And then you can go one step further and go into operationalization and other things that will force you to speak much more precisely. And the game is not to speak precisely at all times, it is merely to speak precisely sufficient for the context that you find yourself in. If you're a scientist or if you're a political agent, you might want to speak precisely enough so that the audience can understand in their frame of reference what it is that you wish to impress upon them. In your family, you don't have to speak at all times very precisely if you're just asking somebody to move the dishes. And the other thing is keeping promises. When you want to accomplish something that is of larger than trivial size, you're going to have to make promises to people that you're going to have to try and keep. You're going to have to make agreements with each other that project a future state of the world that you're going to have to actually work to realize, and that takes a kind of commitment and dedication that will ask something of you, will ask you to sacrifice. We heard that yesterday as well. Are you actually willing and able to sacrifice everything else for the attainment of the solutions to these crises that we talk about? Luke often talks about confidence from competence. He isn't here today with us, unfortunately, but he will be again. If you end up at this place where you trust that the work that we've done at the Institute is valuable, has answers to questions, and does address these crises of our age, then you're going to be freed up from that nagging background voice in your head that says, but look at how messed up the world is. What are you going to do about it? What's your answer to how to address these problems in all these domains at all these scales? Lots of people have that nagging voice in the back of their head that keeps them from actually investing their energy in the things and the people and the ventures right in front of their nose, demanding them, asking them, begging them for their involvement. I assert that if you understand our work, there isn't a subject left that we can't give you answers to your questions in. Or at least point out to you the questions that you should be asking yourself if you truly care about achieving the outcomes that you say you're after. And sometimes, yes, we will point out that the question that you're asking is actually ill-framed and should be reframed so that you can actually have an answer to your question. Now, if you trust that our institute has done that work, if you have arrived at that place, and if you recognize that to be the case, what does that concretely mean for you now? It means that you are free to dedicate the totality of your energy to that near influence that Andrew talked about yesterday. It means that you can address the domains that are actually receptive to your influence, whether that be your family, your community, your church, your business, your employees and employers, your local school board, your audience, and whoever else you exist in some manner of relationship with. Our civilization really needs you. We need you to be able to do that work. We need you to invest yourself into that challenge. Emergency. Our civilization is in an emergency. We are descending down ever faster. And so if we have any hope of addressing these crises, we need you to use all your available energy in service first of your personal interests so that you are a capable actor, an agent. If you're ineffective and you involve yourself in the political realm, you're actually a negative influence. Net negative. You have to first go from 0 to 1, as Thiel talks about, before you can actually become somebody that produces something of positive value. If you're just a 0.7 or even a 0.99, you're merely taking away from the things that you times that number with. And so if you've pursued your personal interests first, if you've made yourself into an effective agent, then you can make yourself, then you can put yourself in service of the social organisms at all these scales that you rely upon and that rely upon you. Because we need you to be patriarchs and matriarchs. We need you to build banks, to build churches, to build businesses. We need you to reform those organizations that are decrepit, or take the organizations that are beyond saving behind the shed and put them out of their misery. We need you to be excellent and not just in the think boy way. We don't need you to just understand how terrible things are. That's not of value to anybody. We need you to take charge and to outcompete the idiots and the illegitimate imposter elites that are standing in our way. That's the challenge and the task. And so what that means is you need to become a statesman. First, you build yourself up. You can talk to Noah, you can talk to Luke, you can talk to each of the people in our spheres that help you do that. But once you've developed that agency, you can then rededicate that agency not just to the things that are very near to you, but to the large scope, the long time preference objectives that we're pursuing. You can solve real problems and you can take responsibility for all the things that you say you care about addressing. Statecraft on my Apple Dictionary app is defined as the skillful management of state affairs or statesmanship. Issues of statecraft require great deliberation. I submit to you that statecraft is something that you can practice in your day-to-day life, where you envision a future state of the world that you wish to realize. Then you identify what is the sequence of events you have to actually make come true so that that happens. And then you have to do it. And the notions that you hold in your head about how to do that are actually the very things that are holding you back from accomplishing that very task. Because you are improperly organized in your mind, and that prevents you from being in relationship, in conversation with reality. So figure out what your thing is and do that thing. If you don't know that yet, support somebody else who does. That's how I've done it the past 10 years. I've looked for people like Curt, like Arthur Brock, like other people who have a future vision of the world that is worth involving myself in and dedicating my energy to, until I was in a place where I have the ability, the agency, the resources, the network to actually formulate my own vision and have that be of any merit. There's no shortage of projects, outcomes, and ventures in our circles and others to get involved in. Everybody has their pet project. Some of them are great, some of them are not. Again, asking you to be discerning in that, but many of the valuable ones are represented here today by the people at this event. And I would invite you to seek them out. Talk to them if something resonates with you. Ask them, what do you need to accomplish your objective? What is in your way that I can help you remove? John, where are you? John Haskins. John over there started a church with his friends. That's a very specific, very concrete thing to bring value to people that are in need of leadership. The Pacific Northwest guys, I think some of which are here, but many are not in our network, they do work parties. They go to each other's houses and they help each other construct additional structures. They build stuff, they create offices, they perform work together, they create value together, and through that build relationships that are not based on merely being in the same internet group of interesting people, but actually building bonds of mutual support. And so there are many of these kinds of efforts you can involve yourself in. And so I would like to ask you to come talk to me, come talk to Brandon, and we will work with you so that you can take on the bad actors in your areas. We will help you to get the capital that you need for the expansion of the thing that's already working. We will work that you have the backing from people that can defend you when things go awry, because that will happen. If you're going to be doing anything of import whatsoever, you're going to be the target of cancellation or of attacks, and sometimes worse than that, and you need the backing up of people who are prepared to defend you. Now, for those of you who don't yet have your mission, Noah, you're excluded, I would like to do a brief exercise with you. If you have something to write in, whether it be your phone or perhaps a piece of paper, I would like to ask you to write down right now, to the best of your ability, in one sentence, what it is that your life is actually organized to achieve. Take a moment. It can be imperfect, it doesn't have to be perfectly articulated. Take a moment, reflect, and write that down. If there's any among you that is already finished and that is willing to say it out loud, I'd love your contribution. Noah, maybe you can say what your mission is.
So my mission is to father the underfathered in the world.
He said, to father the underfathered in the world. Very precise, very concrete. Bryan?
we must be on the same page, because the thing that I get the most emotional access is just being a good dad. Being a great dad was really key for me, because I was raised without a father, and I know how much that hurt and how much it was created an empty and a void and a searching. And so I absolutely knew to clean it up for my son and for my daughter.
Right.
So it's real high up there.
Being a good dad, yes. A good dude and a good dad. That's right. Beck talked about the founding fathers in Palestra Bureau in El Salvador that I met him at. And they're called the founding fathers. They're not called the founding dudes or the founding guys. They're the founding fathers. They made it their business to father a nation into existence, to conceive of it and to create it. Who else? Hi.
To heal and rebuild nobility in my family.
To heal and rebuild nobility in your family. Beautiful. Very much committed to the near presence, the near influence. All right. If you have done that, I would like to invite you at a future point in time to actually go through and specify that out into smaller items that are accomplishments that large accomplishment relies on. To father the underfathered, what does that mean? Yes, he can do it with this. He can father his own children, but he has to then actually construct himself into the kind of person that can do that. He actually has to create vehicles that accomplish that, to create courses perhaps, or to coach people. These are specific avenues of activity, specific vectors of activity that are required to accomplish that larger aim that you're aiming at. And so the state of affairs tree thing that I identify here, there's an image that I took that is from a time that I did that. One of these says, contributing to a Cambrian explosion of social organisms, which is really just letting 1,000 nations bloom. That's one of the things that I had on my mind. It has since been restated, but that is what I had on my mind. And so when you do that, and you break these things down into constituent parts, and you continue to do that with each of these things until you reach a thing you can actually accomplish now, then you have a full chain of your highest value and the highest aim you're aiming at, all the way down to an action you can take right now. And it's that kind of feeling I want you to sit with and to feel throughout your day when you're doing the things you're doing, because that is what you need to be able to do these things well and to fully be committed to the thing that you're doing, because you know that what you're doing is actually in service of your higher aim. Maybe you're taking that shitty job because it is instrumental in getting the capital so that you can do your own business. And you'll be happy to do it even though you might not like the way it looks. Rule of law, that's what we talk about. It's two things. It's rule and it is law. And we do the law, and we need you guys to rule. We need you guys to commit yourself to the task of becoming the statesmen that actually have the ability, the pull, the resources, the capacity to create new states, to remediate the solutions in the states that we already inhabit, and to actually go after the positive demonstration of virtue and excellence, not merely the critique and the removal of the decrepit and degenerate. Curt is an Anglo, and so his intuitions tell him that just remove the bad stuff and the good stuff will flourish. I disagree. Yes, you need to do that. It's a necessary condition, but the sufficient condition is to actually model what it is like to do the good. And so we need these fathers, we need these excellences, these nobilities, these aristocrats to rise again and to model what it is to be perhaps a good Christian, perhaps a statesman, perhaps an upstanding citizen. These are all archetypes that you can inhabit and embody. And we need all of you guys to do that so that the law can actually be built and adhered to through the people at the top modeling what that looks like. Most people are not going to be in this room, ever. They don't need to be in this room. They just need to understand what it is that is expected of them and how you are expecting them to do that. And they need the tools to accomplish that. And so we need you guys to take on the via positiva to our via negativa. And so if you do that, we have an offer to make you. If you commit yourself to that task, we will help you in all the ways that you need help. We might not at all times be able to give you the help that you need at that point in time ourselves directly, but we will make it our mission to get it to you in whatever manner we can, because our network is quite vast. We have relationships to people, to all the people that matter. That's what we call them, whether directly or indirectly. And so the Institute focuses on the via negativa so that we can create the law that keeps everybody on the straight and narrow, but we need you guys to do the via positiva work, and we are going to create a market for that via positiva work that we're going to relate amongst each other. We're going to have the people that are doing the good work understand that they are doing so and be supported in it. Our threat to the people who don't perform excellences, who are not virtuous, who are not demonstrating leadership of the good in the public eye is, we will judge you. You will be judged. And those among you who want to know how to do that, come talk to us too. There is a science and a practice of judging whether people are demonstrating reciprocity, are speaking truthfully in the public, are conducting themselves in a manner that is leading the people under their charge to the good or away from it. It's a difficult discipline, it's a difficult training, but if you do it, you will be a force to be reckoned with. So, what's next for us at the Institute and for you? We are planning to fundraise. We're planning to professionalize. We're planning to do operations, actual concrete operations of attaining specific outcomes that we set our mind to that are below the threshold of the reformation and revivification of our civilization. Because that's what we've done. We've broken down that large task into the constituent elements that need to happen for that to take place. And we have identified the specific and concrete opportunities, and we need you to continue to identify these opportunities and these threats to that so that we can do the work to actually achieve our aims. It kind of looks a bit like open source code and proprietary solutions. If any of you are in the tech industry, we publish what we have produced in our work as the code you can run, the code that you can adopt into your own work and run it in your own solution and make use of it. We grant you a free license to adopt our work, but we need you to actually put that into something that normal people can interface with. We need you to create the businesses, as I said, the churches and so on, to do that. So with that, any questions? Daniel?
Yeah, could you say a little bit more about the science and the art of judging whether reciprocity is being accomplished?
Certainly. We have done the work to put the social sciences on a scientific foundation. And not a kind of scientistic foundation, but a scientific foundation. Or rather, we have done the work to practice the discipline of testimony in matters of the social sciences. And what that looks like is, for example, restating psychology as acquisitionism, meaning that we're all biological beings. We all have to acquire something to persist through time, whether that be energy in food, or whether that be opportunities through status, or other things like that. So that's one of the examples of us restating a discipline into something that is actually related to the foundations that that discipline at that scale rests upon, and what it itself then builds on top of it. And when you do that, you remove all the confusion that otherwise prevents you from actually seeing reality for what it is. You spoke a bit about symbols and the language and the relationship between these two. And so a lot of our work actually looks like having the symbols that people use be correspondent to the appropriate meaning that they actually are supposed to invoke. And so it's a lot about creating clarity through studying a discipline and being extremely precise about what a symbol is actually intended to evoke. And so when you do that, you can in your own life first experience what it's like to move through the world where I don't become the unwitting recipient of an improperly framed understanding of the world that would lead me to make bad decisions. I think actually J.D. Vance right now is a great example in the public eye, where on the vice presidential debate, he never let the moderators frame a question without reframing it first when it wasn't to his liking. And you need to have that kind of assertive stance to be able to not let the unthinkingness that you spoke to rule the day. And so we also restate economics as the science of cooperation. And so you can typically identify when somebody is not cooperating with you because they're actually compelling you or manipulating you by lying, by deceiving you. And we also have the criteria that we attach to speech about the public, to the public, and matters public, that we hold people account to when they do it in our presence. And so I can't really speak to the entirety of what that looks like in all domains, but if you're interested in that, let's have a conversation later, and I'll tell you more what that looks like in a discipline or a domain that you are very interested in. Who else? Beck?
Very curious about the mechanisms for this help, right? And I do understand things that are very tangible for people who live locally, right? Local is the hard power, the hard tangible help, whereas distance kind of needs soft, right? It's soft power, it's influence, it's connectivity, it's communication. Just describe to me the benefits of the soft, the distant, as opposed to the hard, the local and the near of which you spoke.
What's the problem you have right now?
Talent is a big.
There you go. Very specific question, right? Talent. Do we have any talent in our ranks? I think we do. You just have to tell us, what do you need? And we'll publish it among our people. It can be very...
I didn't understand his question until just now. You understood it, I didn't.
Yes. Beck asked essentially, what does it look like to have that soft support, let's say, that isn't local in nature? It looks like, well, making known what you actually need. And when you've done that, then we can organize to accomplish that. Curt?
I think you have to understand that there's a spectrum of us in the organization. We're not, this isn't like, you have to learn this thing and say exactly this. It's just a science, right? We get good at the science, but you'll notice that if you have, let's say, where's Bryan? Bryan will worry about how people feel about things very often. He'll teach us about that. You'll have Luke and
Noah?
where's Noah?
Here.
There you are. Luke and Noah will talk about the personal family relationships with things. We have groups, people here that, which is what I noticed during your speech. So I was like, you're making the local point again. Is that we're talking to a certain group of people that we know are going to be in the video as well as in this room, and they want to act immediately. So he's what Moritz is doing is he's talking about that local effect. But then there are people like Brandon who work across the spectrum with other groups, and my basic function is to fuck up Marxists. Right? And so we all have, we don't do it like we're just one thing. What we've got is we understand there's a market for the need for this understanding, and there's also a market for the need to feel like you're acting or you're participating, which is why we hold these things so you can come to them and feel like, oh shit, there was a fucking plan here. So each of us will talk about this different part. Now, I think you're relatively new, right? I'm sitting here thinking, I was asking a sophisticated question.
He was a guest speaker yesterday.
Okay, great. So the issue here is that that I'm trying to provide for you is that if you were to talk to Brandon and Moritz and I in an executive meeting on outreach, it would sound like we only thought about the soft. side of what you call the soft side of it. And if you were to talk to Martin and I, we would talk about the technical side of it, like the intellectuals. And if you were to talk to Noah about it, who's a great communicator, he will talk about the personal and familial and masculine development, or the cognitive development of people. The same thing with Luke. So we all have this. We have this entire spectrum that we're sort of trying to address. All the think of it as markets we're addressing. And so in his speech, he's doing it. Now, while I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, well, you just asked a really freaking hard question, honestly. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if we've got 3 hours, because it'd take 3 hours to answer it. So what I would say is that's a conversation for the dinner table, which will be fascinating, rather than this forum. And I hate to say no to a question, but it's just a practical thing that there's just no way we're going to get you to that level. But you'll find a lot in my presentation.
I mean, my last slide that I haven't gotten to yet is this one, work with us. We have a website where you can understand what our work looks like and what it provides. We have another website that's the org side, which is really about the community aspect of our work, which means creating the social fabric, the social scaffolding for actually accomplishing these aims that we talk about. And then we have a way for you to contact us with that email, and then also my email right here, m@statecraft.systems. And what that statecraft.systems speaks to is my personal venture that I have created to accomplish what I just talked about. I've making it my business to support the people who are aiming at statecraft and to systematize how they accomplish that and to support them in doing so. So if you're interested in that, we can talk about that too. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, great. Then I yield the microphone.